6. Where does the Bible command worship on Sabbath? Answer. The Bible commands worship on the Sabbath. The Bible explicitly commands worship on the seventh-day Sabbath, Saturday, and never transfers this command to Sunday. Below are clear scriptural references proving that God established Sabbath worship for his people. 1. The fourth commandment, a direct command to worship on the Sabbath. Exodus 28-11, KJV. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Key points. The Sabbath is the only commandment that begins with remember, showing its importance. It is called the Sabbath of the Lord thy God, not just for Jews, but for all who worship God. It includes everyone in the household, including strangers, Gentiles, living among them. 2. The Sabbath was a holy convocation, assembly for worship. Leviticus 23:3, KJV. 6 days shall work be done, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of rest and holy convocation. Ye shall do no work therein. It is the Sabbath of the Lord in all your dwellings. Key points. Holy convocation means a sacred assembly, a gathering for worship. The Sabbath was to be observed in all your dwellings, meaning it was not limited to the temple in Jerusalem. 3. The Sabbath was for all generations forever. Exodus 31:16-17, KJV. Wherefore the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to observe the Sabbath throughout their generations, for a perpetual covenant. It is a sign between me and the children of Israel forever. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, and on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed. Key points. The Sabbath is a perpetual covenant, ongoing, eternal. God linked the Sabbath to creation, meaning it predates Israel and is meant for all humanity. 4. Jesus worshipped on the Sabbath. Luke 4:16, KJV. And he came to Nazareth, where he had been brought up, and, as his custom was, he went into the synagogue on the Sabbath day and stood up to read. Key points. Jesus had a custom of worshipping on the Sabbath. If he had planned to change the day of worship, he would have taught it clearly, but he did not. 5. The early church worshipped on the Sabbath. Acts 13:42-44, KJV. And when the Jews were gone out of the synagogue, the Gentiles besought that these words might be preached to them the next Sabbath. And the next Sabbath day came almost the whole city together to hear the word of God. Key points. Gentiles, non-Jews, requested Sabbath teaching, showing that it was not just for Jews. If Sunday had replaced the Sabbath, Paul would have invited them to worship the next day, Sunday, but instead they gathered on the Sabbath. Acts 16:13, KJV. And on the Sabbath we went out of the city by a riverside, where prayer was wont to be made. And we sat down, and spake unto the women which resorted thither. Key points. Even in a city with no synagogue, believers still gathered for prayer on the Sabbath. The Sabbath remained important even outside Jewish communities. Acts 17:2, KJV. And Paul, as his manner was, went in unto them, and 3 Sabbath days reasoned with them out of the Scriptures. Key points. Paul's regular practice was to worship and teach on the Sabbath. He did not switch to Sunday worship. 6. The Sabbath will be kept in heaven and the new earth. Isaiah 66:22-23, KJV. For as the new heavens and the new earth which I will make shall remain before me, saith the Lord, so shall your seed and your name remain. And it shall come to pass, that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord. Key points. All flesh, not just Jews, will worship on the Sabbath in the new earth. The Sabbath was never abolished. It continues into eternity. Conclusion. The Bible clearly commands worship on the Sabbath. The Ten Commandments establish the Sabbath as a holy day. Exodus 20, 8-11. It is a day for sacred gatherings. Leviticus 23:3. Jesus worshipped on the Sabbath. Luke 4:16. The apostles and early church continued Sabbath worship. Acts 13:42-44, Acts of 16:13, Acts 17:2. The Sabbath will be observed in the new earth. Isaiah 66:22-23. The claim that the Bible does not command worship on the Sabbath is false. The Sabbath is not only a day of rest, but a day of worship, commanded by God for all people throughout history and into eternity.